Hey there, hope you're doing really good. Sorry for the delay there. I was not sure if I was on the right Wi-Fi network. That said, welcome to this whole bunch of questions to go over, and hope to bring a lot of value. There's a couple of success stories in here. One from Brittany, super proud, from another one from what's her name, Glynis, and a lot of questions. So. Let's get started right away here. I'm going to try to I always go on these like side note here, there. I'm going to try to be more concise today to bring the most value. So with this said, let us actually start away with an email from Ryan, who's from the Philippines, has asked a couple of questions about like how to get off medications, etc. And actually, you know what, as I'm speaking, I'm decided to actually start with a success story. Always nice to have those. And I want to, before we read this email from Brittany, a big thanks to Brittany, because she decided to come back and let us know how things were going several months after she interacted with me on the channel here. So let's just read it. So it goes as follows. Hi, Daniel. I emailed you a few months ago and thought I'd give you a little update on where I am right now. First, I want to thank you for your podcast. Everything you say is on point. Whenever I have a setback, I will listen to your podcast, and it gives me confidence to sleep back. Thanks for the support, and I'm happy it's helping you, Brittany. Anyways, my first email to you, I said I was type A, a health nut with anxiety, which contributed to my insomnia. Last year, at this time, I was sleeping 2 to 4 hours a night. Now I'm sleeping 7 to 9 hours a night, about 80% of the nights. Big improvement. The main reason I wanted to email you, though, was to update you on my Ironman. And before we read here, I never forget that Brittany was going to do an Ironman, and she was very worried about how she was going to sleep before it. And what I talked a lot about in an episode at some point there was how we have to prevent this anticipatory anxiety. It's important actually to find evidence that sleep doesn't always determine everything. Sleep is not that important to performance. You can do well even on little sleep, and that can really help you not stress out so much. So that's kind of what we talked about that time. Now, and I never forget that I had a viewer that was going to do an Ironman, and I never forget that. So really cool to have feedback here. If you remember, I mentioned I was really anxious about not sleeping before this big event. Well, the week before, I didn't end up sleeping well. There were a lot of issues that popped up that made me extra stressed. And the night before the Ironman, I was up all night. I slept less than 2 hours. The reason I didn't sleep was I was worried about not being able to complete my Ironman on no sleep. So the anxiety made it so I couldn't sleep. But despite not sleeping well all week and the night before, I still completed the Ironman and felt relatively good as you can for 13.5 hours of straight cardio. The worst night of the year for me not to sleep, and my day still went great. Check that out. That's amazing. This was like literally the night of the whole year where she was supposed to sleep well because she had an Ironman. She slept the worst night of the year, and guess what? Her day still went, quote unquote, great. That is so amazing. That shows you that not everything hinges on sleep. And why am I so excited about that, you may wonder? Because once you kind of realize that, I can do fine, I can even complete an Ironman on no sleep, then guess what? You become much less afraid of losing sleep. And when you're not afraid of losing sleep, you never do. That's why I'm so excited about this. I thought it might be helpful for others to know that no sleep doesn't really affect your performance as much as I believed. A sleepless night can make the next day as good or bad as you let it. Thanks for everything. Thank you, Brittany. Anybody else that's tuning in here, it's amazing that Brittany's coming back, because oftentimes when you're sleeping better, you kind of want to forget about the whole insomnia thing, which is completely understandable, and that is good. You want to get to a place where you don't ever think about insomnia again. But if you get to a point where you're sleeping really well after tuning into this podcast or YouTube channel, then it is super, super, super helpful to hear back from you, because that gives other people hope. I'm gonna do another episode completely dedicated to this email and really play up this important message from Brittany. Thank you, Brittany. So with that said, now let's go more chronologically here. And actually want to start with, we'll go back to Ryan in a second, but Samuel, Samuel here, sent me an email 7 days ago, and Samuel had been really worried because he'd heard that if you don't sleep for a long time, you can hallucinate, and he said that the thought of hallucinating was really scary to him, and he did eventually. I replied and said that I have actually never come across that, and I think that there's no evidence in my to my knowledge to support that. Before that people think you're going to hallucinate if you don't sleep enough or go crazy or something like that, which I don't feel there's any evidence for. But he did send me a link to a study we had read about this, and this is for Samuel and anybody else that's tuning here. I did look at this study, which, by the way, is called the following. So just so you know what I'm talking about, it's called "Severe Sleep Deprivation Causes Hallucinations and a Gradual Progression Towards Psychosis with Increasing Time Awake." Well, listen to that article, like that title is from Frontiers of Psychiatry. This is Front Psychiatry of 2018, but the title is in itself very anxiety provoking, which you would think that scientific publications are different from, like, the Daily Mail or something like that, but they really aren't. It's the same principle. You want to grab attention as a scientist too, so therefore you often have these alarmist messages in titles. When you actually read this article, the following turns out: that there hasn't been any actual studies to support this, title for like more than 20 years. Actually, I think much more. I think they say in the article that keeping somebody awake for like 48 hours or 72 hours is no longer ethically acceptable. So there aren't really any recent studies. So they're going back to studies from like the 40s or 50s and something like that. And guess what? We don't know what was going on like 30, 40 years in the scientific field. And another big question here is like, okay, if you set out to investigate hallucinations in sleep deprived people, and you keep people up like for 24 hours, 36 hours, 48 hours, and you keep asking them like, are you having any hallucinations? Is your vision affected? Are you feeling it? Are you seeing it? People are going to say yes. They're going to feel pressured to say yes. So I just wanted to share with Samuel and anybody else that there's nothing in this article that supports the notion that if you have a sleep deprivation, you're going to go crazy or have hallucinations or anything like that. In fact, I want to point this out. Sleep deprivation is actually been shown to be very effective for insomnia. And sorry, I meant to say very effective for anxiety and depression. Keeping somebody up for 24 hours has been shown to be an effective treatment for depression. Just to keep that in mind, I think is important. So, Samuel, hope that helped you, and thanks for all your support for the channel with the questions. Now let's go to Ryan. Let's go to Ryan here, who emailed me 3 days ago, and he said the following: right now, my palpitations and panic attacks significantly decreased, and I feel a lot calmer. But then, ironically, my sleep patterns again shifted. Much of my sleep became fragmented, and my sleep became extremely late. In some instances, my sleep duration is short, like 4 hours. There are times where I wake up in the middle of the night and stay awake for like 4 to 5 hours before getting back to sleep. I think my decision to quit work once I found a new one has contributed in partially reducing work-related stress and worries. The sleeplessness and erratic sleep pattern annoys me tremendously. I don't know what I can do to be able to sleep easily and satisfactorily. I really hope I could get more definite and consistent sleep pattern. I'm also worried that insomnia could be fatal. I hope it isn't. I've read about this sporadic fatal insomnia, and boy, it kind of kept me awake even more. It worries me, especially it appears that detecting it may be difficult. I've been like that for quite some time, and my impression is I'm not really getting anywhere. My sleep pattern remained erratic for as long as I can remember, and I have kept a good record of my sleep since the last week of October 2019. It doesn't look so good. And as you pointed out in your videos, medication doesn't make me sleep. It's the body that does that. Medications only remove the stumbling block which prevents my body from sleeping. I noticed that the effects of medications would now take effect a bit later than it used to be. So kind of going towards tolerance here. Medications are no longer effective. Now, I want to say the following, Ryan, that a couple of things popped into my mind as I was reading this. One was um, the sleep pattern. It can feel like sleep can certainly feel like you don't have any control over it. That's very common with insomnia, of course. But the reality is you do have control, not over sleep per se. We cannot control like when we fall asleep and how much we sleep, but we can control all the circumstances surrounding sleep, making sleep inevitable. And what do I mean by that? Well, if somebody decides that I'm gonna get up at this time every day, let's say at 6 a.m., and I'm not gonna go to bed before midnight, I'm gonna spend only 6 hours in bed. That is typically less time in bed than you need to sleep, which means that over time you're going to build more and more sleep drive, like you're going to be more and more sleepy, and that's going to eventually lead to you falling asleep faster and falling back asleep. And the other thing is attention shifting. You mentioned here that I've kept a good record of my sleep since last week, October 19. For somebody that doesn't have any problem sleeping, they can do whatever they want. They can keep track of their sleep if they want, no problem. But if you have trouble sleeping, you want to go in the complete opposite direction. You don't want to track your sleep. You don't want to be clock watching. You don't want to pay any attention to sleep because insomnia thrives on attention. Attention is like oxygen to insomnia. That's what keeps it going. So what you want to do is spend less time in bed, and you want to be happy. Do things that are fun and engaging. Go whale watching, or start learn how to bake, or do something that's completely different from what you usually do, and that's fun and entertaining. And if you can do that, set it and forget it. Set a time when you get up in the morning. Don't go to bed too early, and then forget about everything else regarding sleep. That's really helpful. So regarding the sporadic fail insomnia, um, I may as well say this now. There were many questions about that this episode, but I want to share one thing that I think may be a game changer here, and it is a comment to episode 248. So if you check Insomnia Insight number 248, read a comment from Highfill Invest. He tells us how you can actually sequence your own genome, and there's apparently a way to find out if you have it or not. That's what he says. I don't know if this is correct or not. He didn't reply to my comment. That could be a game changer. Then you can just find out if you have it or not. So that could be huge. And I will not actually comment more on this. Oh yeah, I want to share one more thing, Ryan, which is once it's hard for anyone to get past insomnia, and if you're kind of struggling by yourself, it can be harder. Having a coach, having somebody to help you is helpful. So definitely consider working with Martin Reed. He's my good friend and colleague, Martin Reed. And his site is insomniacoach.com. So definitely consider that. So Ryan, I hope that helped. And thanks for tuning in. Now, here's this another success story that I'm very excited about. Toine, who was one of the first people that I ever connected with on this channel. I think when people feel like they have slow progress, I always think about Toine, because he had this type of never gave up, just kept working on the CBTI, and had this gradual 2 months later was better than 2 months before. 4 months later was better than slow improvement towards getting better and better. That's when I hear Toine, it's always when people ask me about example of kind of slow improvement, I think about Toine. So anyway, let's read this email from Toine. Hi Daniel, it's been over 6 months since we talked and over a year since I started CBTI. I feel that my sleep has mostly improved over this long stretch. I've gained enough sleep confidence to discard my sleep diary, staying in the bedroom, and napping once in a while. I'm forever grateful for your efforts to help people like me. And Toine, I'm super thankful for having had a chance to interact with you, and it's so helpful getting emails like this, Toine. So thank you. And by the way, congratulations. This is thanks to your hard work that you now have sleep confidence, so you can get to a point where you don't even feel a need to keep track of time, ditching the sleep diary. You can stay in bed longer because, it's not a problem anymore. You can take a nap here and there. This is amazing. Even though I still experience the occasional sleepless night, I power through the following day. Because of these bad nights, I continue to be religiously following sleep restriction therapy and other practices such as ditching the clock. The past few weeks has been a rough stretch. I suspect that it has to do with some sort of like holiday-related anxiety. The night before a road trip, I slept very lightly. Over the next 3 nights, sleep was good, including the night before driving back home. Then, sleeplessness struck on the night before going back to work. The following 4 nights were good until last night when I had promised a relative that I would drive her to the airport early in the morning. My question to you would be, number 1, is this a rough patch or some new sleep pattern where insomnia is flaring up? 2, should recovering patients, even after a year, expect to be susceptible to these type of events? Reading between the lines of success stories, the patients seem to put more emphasis on dismissing difficulty nights rather than achieving ideal sleep, hence not caring about sleep or not. If patients continue to be susceptible, will this severity wane over time? I'm thinking that my recovery will be ongoing for a while. I mean, really, really good questions. Really good questions. And I hope I'll do a good job of answering them here. Number 1. Actually, before we go over number 1, I want to say the following. I get, you get the picture reading this, that this is a person who has been sleeping pretty good for about 6 months. And now there was kind of the holidays, the night before a road trip, didn't sleep much, then slept better, then sleeplessness night before going back to work. And then it's somebody who's going to get up early and didn't sleep much at all, which to me, when I read that, I'm thinking, this is pretty normal. It's somebody that doesn't have any trouble sleeping or doesn't consider themselves as having any trouble sleeping could very well write something like this. All these reactions are typical reactions. That's kind of where I was at before I got to the questions, just to share kind of what was going on in my mind as I was reading this. Now, my questions to you would be, number 1, is this a rough patch or some new sleep pattern where insomnia is flaring up? Well, what is insomnia? Well, insomnia really is a reaction to sleeplessness. So it depends on what happens here. If somebody like yourself, Toine, now just goes back to whatever you're doing before, not reacting to it, saying like, okay, I'm just going to keep on, maybe spend a little less time in bed right now, but other than that, I'm not going to start looking for the reason this is happening. I'm not going to start taking supplements. I'm not going to start reacting to this. I'm just going to kind of keep going. Then it's going to become a rough patch. If somebody again starts reacting and like being like, okay, what's going on? Then it might become insomnia. But it's all completely dependent on your reaction to it. So I'm very confident this will be a little rough patch. And that's it, because I know you'll not react to it. You'll go back to doing what you were doing before. Number 2, should recovering patients, even after a year, expect to be susceptible to these type of events? I want to say yes. And here's the thing. Insomnia is a little bit like PTSD. A lot of people are really afraid of the big one, like that time or that specific event where they didn't sleep at all for like 2 weeks or whatever. And that can stay with you for a long time, that fear of that coming back. So the difference between somebody like yourself, Toine, and a random person is that random person that never had any problem sleeping at this point may not think about the fact that they had several sleepless nights. They may just kind of shrug and say this is normal, and then they go on. But somebody that's had insomnia will have that fear of like, maybe my insomnia is coming back. And so yes, stress or anxiety can provoke kind of a stronger sleeplessness in somebody that has had insomnia than somebody who's never had it. But other than that, there's no difference. It's again about the reaction. So I would say, yes, you're kind of like more susceptible to more sleeplessness following stress than somebody who has not had insomnia, but there's nothing more than that. And just like with time, everything calms down. And looking at the pattern of our communication, Toine, as you know, there was a time where I heard from you maybe every week or something, and then it became every month, and then every 2 months, and now it's been 6 months. The next time I hear from you will probably be like, a year and a half. So that tells you how like things get better. Now, a super insightful comment here from Toine. Reading between the lines of success stories, the patients seem to put more emphasis on dismissing difficult nights rather than achieving ideal sleep, hence not caring about sleeping or not. Again, the reaction, meaning people that describes themselves as having gotten past insomnia don't say, now it's great, I sleep perfect, I sleep 8 hours every single night and never have problems. It's more like, now I don't think it's a problem anymore. Now I don't worry about sleep. Now I don't feel exactly like that. It's kind of like the goal, or the measure of success is kind of how little you react to it. If somebody has a sleepless night and they kind of don't react at all, they're like, well, it happens here and there. That is success. That is success. Because the less you react, the less problems you have. That is success. So kind of quote unquote not caring about sleep is a goal. Yeah, it is. Number 3, if patients continue to be susceptible, will severity wane over time? I think I kind of already answered that. The answer is yes, in my opinion. I'm thinking that my recovery will be ongoing for a while. Yes and no, meaning like it's again kind of when somebody's gotten to where you are, Toine, it's almost like it depends on how you look at yourself. I think somebody that's describing what you're describing here, I would say it's normal. So, if you would like to look at yourself as a person who doesn't have insomnia anymore, I think that's true. I think that's true. Are you still in recovery? Well, maybe. Or you could look at it as like, I'm a post-insomnia, like somebody who's had insomnia but no longer has it. It's all kind of about your perception of yourself, really. So, Toine, thanks so much for this, and I'll never forget how, again, you and Mike were like the 2 first people I talked a lot to on the channel here. So thanks so much for the support. Now, Alex, I talked to in Talking Insomnia number 16, and basically a little bit of background there. He had described something that I thought was like hypnic jerks. Hypnic jerks is when you're about to fall asleep, you have a jerky movement. It turns out it was not that. It was actually more of like, just as he was about to fall asleep, he became suddenly aware of being, falling asleep, and that, was kind of alerting and bumped him out of sleep. It was kind of a sudden realization that he was about to fall asleep, a sudden kind of a reflex, he described it as. And now we talked about that, and now he has a follow-up question here. So, good afternoon. I had a chance to listen to the podcast that we did last month, and I had a follow-up question that I would love if you could clarify for me. My question is, when it comes to overcoming hyperarousal, you told me that by doing nothing, I would start to see that I will fall asleep. And I did, exclamation mark. So actually we have kind of a success story here too. A lot of success stories today. That's awesome. And thus, overcome the hyperarousal. While this advice has been most certainly helpful, my question is, was this advice you gave me, specifically the part that by doing nothing, when the sudden hyperarousal happens, I will fall asleep, based on a personal theory, or was it based on your knowledge of what can overcome hyperarousal / stop it from becoming a sleep transition interruption? And so I want to say a couple of things. Number one, first of all, super happy that you're doing better. That's awesome. And it's thanks to you kind of like being willing to take this frightening step of like not doing anything, which is really always the best thing to do when it comes to insomnia and sleep transitional events as well. Now, when it comes to, you're right here, when it comes to overcoming hyperarousal, I just want to point out that I completely know what you mean, but the word overcoming, it suggests kind of like something you do actively, like you kind of like you're working your way to overcome something. It's almost like a struggle. It's something active, and there's nothing you actually can do actively to overcome hyperarousal. Whenever somebody is doing something with the intent of becoming less stressed, with the intent of decreasing hyperarousal, that brings attention to the problem, making it worse. And that goes, and going forward here, you're right, you told me that by doing nothing, okay, this may seem like semantics, but I think it's important. Doing nothing is not the same as not doing anything. When we say do nothing, it implies that, like, okay, I'm not going to do anything, or I'm going to do nothing. I'm going to do nothing. It's almost like actively doing nothing, which I think doesn't really work, because if we're like, let's say you have this like a hypnic jerk or this kind of reflex that you had that sudden hyperarousal, and someone's like, okay, I'm going to do nothing. I'm going to do nothing. I'm going to do nothing. That kind of like thinking about the thing that might happen versus I'm not going to do anything, which is like, okay, I'm not going to do anything. I can't do anything. I'm not going to do anything. This may seem like semantics, but what I really want to point out is that not having hyperarousal, not having insomnia is kind of like completely letting go, not doing anything versus doing nothing. I know it can seem like semantics, but I think it's important. And I hope I got this. I hope it makes sense what I'm talking about here. Now, getting into the question here, when I said you should do nothing when this kind of transitional event happens, was it based on personal theory or knowledge of what can overcome hyperarousal, etc.? I want to say it's both. I hope this is still helpful to you, Alex, but it is my personal theory. It is something I've come up with, or this is believed that I have based on my knowledge of insomnia and hyperarousal. So it's not like I've read about this specifically, but it's kind of like I've gleaned this from books that I've read and from interactions with people and from other experts in the field. So it is kind of personal theory and based on knowledge of what can overcome hyperarousal. So I know I kind of gave you like, I didn't, I said it's both. I don't know. I hope that's still helpful to you, Alex. And by the way, I think another thing I want to point out is that, the question of, does it matter? As long as somebody's doing better, then, I'm always afraid when I get this email, Alex, I'm super happy that you're doing better, but I'm always a little bit, how should I put it, worried, because you're still thinking a lot about this. And then I'm thinking, for somebody that's still paying a lot of attention, maybe it can come back, etc. So, I love questions. I'm super grateful for every single question, but the goal for everyone that has trouble sleeping or haptic jerks or sleep transitional events and stuff like that is really to let go of it giving it any attention. So, keeping that in mind. Alex, thank you. And if you have a follow-up question, please send it to me. And now I know I wasn't going to do any side trips here, but side trip becomes Vince hasn't emailed in a couple of days, which I'm really happy about. Maybe he's doing better. Anyway, that was that. Actually, as I was reading this, I literally 0 minutes ago got an email from Brittany, and she writes the following. When I told her I was going to talk about this tonight, she said, "Great. I know when I was in the thick of it, I desperately wanted to hear positive stories of people who overcame insomnia, so I hope I can help give others some hope." Check that out. That's amazing. Oh my God. So nice, Brittany. I'm so grateful for that. Okay. Now, and we have a couple of comments to go over. And before that, actually, just so I don't forget, I want to answer a question here. And this is a little bit different. This was a client that I had on my app, Bedtime with a Y. That's unfortunately not available right now, but hopefully will be up soon. And this is Natalie. Natalie graduated from Bedtime. I want to say, when was that? In December, so about 3 weeks ago. And then had kind of a follow-up question. So let's read that. Hi, Daniel. I'm looking for some guidance. I was doing so well and had a solid week of good sleep with no medicine, and then randomly a couple of bad nights, and now I feel like things keep crumbling and I'm moving backwards again. part of me thinks I need to just put the medicine away and know I will have a hard couple of nights, or otherwise I'll be stuck in this endless cycle. The idea of trying that, though, also brings up some fear and anxiety. On the other hand, maybe it's okay to go back to the medicine knowing this is part of the journey and won't always be necessary. What do you think best? All right, so firstly, I want to say always trying to be positive that, you Natalie, you did work and you got to a place where you're sleeping well. That's fantastic. And that shows that you can sleep, there's nothing wrong with you, and you can get to a place of good sleep. Again, no question about that. Now, reading this message here, there's a couple of things. Uh, that's a lot of thinking about, like, should I take this medication? Should I not? Should I take it for now? Can I then stop later? How should I do this? And that illustrates the problem with insomnia. It's always about the ambiguity. It's about the, like, should I do this? Should I do that? What if this happens? What if that happens? That uncertainty is like really at the core of the problem, and particularly when it comes to medications. Now, CBTI, the techniques I always talk about here, work great if somebody's taking a medication every night at the same time. No, and doesn't question it. It works great if somebody's not taking a medication at all. The problem becomes if somebody's kind of like using medications conditionally, like I only take it if I can't sleep, or I take an extra dose if I can't sleep, or I'm going to try to not take it, and things like that. Because what happens then is you go to bed and then you're self-monitoring. You're thinking, okay, I've been awake 30 minutes. Maybe I should take it. Oh, now it's been an hour. Maybe I should really take it. Maybe I should just take half. Maybe if I don't take it tomorrow. That process feeds insomnia. That process is not helpful at all. So I think the best thing to do is either decide not to take it and respect that, not question it, but decide, like, I'm done with medications. I'm not taking them at all. That's kind of option one good approach. And the other one is to say, no, I'm going to take it and decide I'm going to take this medication every night at the same time without questioning it for at least 4 weeks. And something like that. And then you can get to the point when you have that sleep confidence again, where you're like, okay, I'm really feeling good. I'm not worried about my sleep. Then you can get off of it. And when somebody's decided to get off a medication, it's, again, really important not to question that decision, to decide, I'm going to take half of the dose in 1 week and then half of that in another week, and then I'm going to take it off and not question it. Because when you start questioning it, when you think about, maybe I should be back on it, maybe that, maybe this, what if, then that set off insomnia again. Now, I think another really important thing here is, there's a setback. I feel like things are going backwards, etc. That is very, 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 very common. Almost everyone has a kind of setback at some point. It could be early in the process of CBTI. It could be late, or, And the important part of that, and now I feel like I didn't do good of a job here in the relapse prevention, which is to say, somebody, which we kind of talked about with Toine earlier, it's when somebody has had trouble sleeping, then you are more susceptible to have more disturbed sleep when something happens. And important then is just not to react to it, to just keep moving forward, not start to react and like, I'm going to try this, I'm going to try this, I'm going to change things. No, just go back to having a fixed wake up time, get up at the same time every morning, don't spend too much time in bed, and just try to be happy, go about your life, don't change anything, move forward. Then you will be back on track. And I'm going to briefly go over my favorite analogy again, which is the hiking one, which is, imagine that you're hiking and the goal is to get to this mountaintop, which is a place of amazing sleep. Well, guess what? You are going to stumble. If you look down and look at the rock you stumble upon, and you start measuring it and lifting it and examining it, and you wonder what you felt, and you wonder how you can adjust your stride for it not to happen again, you're going to be stuck there. You're never going to get past that rock. But if you kind of ignore it and you just keep moving forward, you will reach the mountaintop. Natalie, I hope this helped, and let me know if there's any follow-up questions. And I'm very hopeful and very confident you will get there. All right, so that was Natalie. And actually, as I have my phone up here, I'm going to read a question from Jay, and Jay is gonna probably probably gonna disagree with me here, but I think there's a little bit of success story here too. And I say that because there was a time where Jay would message me almost daily, and Jay was one of these people that we're gonna hear a little more from in a second that was really afraid of this thing called SFI, which is a sporadic fatal insomnia, which is this extremely rare neurodegenerative condition that should never have been called an insomnia. And he was very worried about it and slept almost nothing. So here, long time no talk. That's right, and then that's great. That's amazing, Jay. Um, I was sleeping. I was wondering. I'm sleeping a bit better most nights. And when you read that from someone like Jay, I'm sleeping a bit better. That's all, I read it almost like it as like I sleep fantastic, which I know I'm exaggerating that, but that's kind of what I read it as. I sleep better most nights, 4.5 hours to 5. Fall asleep most of the time about 45 minutes. My question is, I'm unable to nap. I can never ever seem to nap. Can you please reply to this in a video? Absolutely. So first thing that came to mind as I was reading this was like, well, for somebody that sleeps perfect, I have no problem sleeping, they can nap, that's no problem. But I would say for someone that has trouble sleeping, generally speaking, you don't want to nap, because if you nap, then that kind of disrupts your sleep. You don't have enough of that sleep drive, that need for sleep when you go to bed. So one question to you, Jay, would be like, is it really in your best interest to nap? That's kind of one question. Napping, when people try to nap, or like when people tell me I try to go to bed this time, actually that's a classic one. I should talk more about that. But whenever I see people in clinic, I always go like, so what time do you go to bed? And people are like, well, I really try to be in bed by, when they say I really try to be in bed, my mind goes like, okay, we have some insomnia issues here. This person really wants to sleep. They're trying to sleep. They're making sure they go to sleep, etc. And when we want to sleep, sleep doesn't happen. Okay. When we're not trying to sleep, sleep comes easy. And so when I read this, another thing that popped in my mind as I was reading this, Jay, was, are you kind of like trying to get more sleep? Is that why you want to nap? Are you trying to get more sleep? Because that is, it's very hard, because of course you want to sleep more when you have trouble sleeping, but the pursuit of sleep, wanting to sleep, trying to sleep, is a big driver of insomnia. So if that's the case, if somebody like yourself, Jay, is like trying to nap because you're trying to get more sleep, the solution is actually to go kind of in the opposite direction of like not trying to nap, not trying to get more sleep, just doing things during the day that are fun and engaging, and that will really help with sleep. And now this actually segues well to actually answering the question, which is, why is it I can't nap during the day? Well, sleep is not complicated. It is a gas and brake model here. Gas is our sleep drive. When we have been awake for a long time, we're more sleepy. We have a kind of sleep drive, or you can call it sleep debt. We need sleep. We're sleepy. That's the gas. Sleepiness. That's the gas, and that makes us want to sleep. Of course, hyperarousal, which can be anxiety, can be stress, it can be excitement, all those type of things. Heightened alertness, attention to sleep, preoccupation, that can block sleep. That's just the gas and the brake. That's it. Gas and brake. That's all there is to it. So why can't you nap? Well, either there isn't enough gas, you're not sleepy enough, or you have too much brake. You're still to some degree preoccupied, worried, stressed, etc. But more likely, subtle hyperarousal is the case. A lot of people are like, have this thing where they can't nap, and I think it's mostly because of that hyperarousal, meaning somebody that had trouble sleeping may go try to take a nap, but is still thinking about it, like, okay, I'm gonna nap now. What if I can't nap? What does that mean? What if I nap? What if I can never nap again? What if, like, that kind of thinking about sleep is often the reason why you can't nap. And again, I don't know that you should nap, somebody like yourself, Jay, but that is probably the reason why. And oftentimes people report as a success when they can nap. Like, people are telling me like, this is amazing, I can nap. I haven't been able to nap for like 2 years. And when people say that, it's like, that's because the hyperarousal is lifting. You may not feel stressed or anxious or worried, but you may have a subtle variety of that subtle hyperarousal that is keeping you from napping. So that could be it. So Jay, hope that helped. And with that said, I am going to move to the comment section where we are going to have another success story, which I'm super excited about. But before that, I think there was one more. Ask Daniel number 3. And Sheldon writes the following. Thank you so much for answering my question about dreams. I've noted that when insomnia acts up, the vivid dreams get worse. Must be my body's way of trying to catch up? Question mark. I've also been a light. I've also always been a light sleeper, so that may have something to do with more realistic dream recall? Question mark. Thank you again. Yes. So when my insomnia acts up, the vivid dreams get worse. Must be my body's way of trying to catch up on okay. It must be my ways, but I'm not sure exactly what the question was there about the catching up. Like maybe Sheldon means like catching up on dreaming, but irrespectively, I think we can definitely talk about this and bring some value here. Meaning, when insomnia acts up, the vivid dreams get worse. That doesn't surprise me at all. And that the reason it doesn't surprise me is that if somebody has very solid, peaceful sleep, they usually have very little dream recall. They may dream a whole bunch, but they don't remember it because they're sleeping through it. Now, if somebody for any reason has a more fragmented, superficial sleep, then there is more dream recall. So it's not like you dream more, but you just recall more. So when you have insomnia, when you have this hyperarousal, you're hyper-aware, you're in and out of sleep, you're superficial sleep, then you will recall more dreams, and they may seem more vivid as well. And why are they more vivid? Because, well, you're just remembering more. They can seem more vivid for that reason, but I believe it's also because of the attention, like you're kind of very attentive, so that can make them seem more vivid, and also you can have this state where you're in and out of sleep, where your thoughts become dreams, your dreams become thoughts, and that can make it seem very vivid. So no surprise there. I've always been a light sleeper. That may have something to do. Absolutely, same thing again. If you're a light sleeper, you're much more likely to have more dream recall, more realistic dream recall, I believe, too. So absolutely. Sheldon, hope that helped, and thanks so much for commenting. And here is another little success story, which I'm super excited about. And this is a Glynis wrote a comment on Talking Insomnia number 17 2 days ago. And Glynis, I can't remember in which episode it was, but it was one of these that I now call Ask Daniel. I used to call them episode pod for a while. And there's a reply to Glynis. And Glynis had written some very good questions, and I can't remember exactly what they were, but I felt very optimistic actually, just by the tone of Glynis's message. And she says the following: I can definitely testify to what you said, Daniel, about getting deeper sleep if you spend less time in bed. Since I started using sleep restriction and shortened my time in bed by an hour, I'm definitely sleeping much deeper, going back to sleep much quicker when I wake up during the night, and listen to this one, I'm feeling much more refreshed during the day, mentally and physically. This is amazing. I'm super happy, Glynis, and this is thanks to your work. You actually committed to spending less time in bed, and you are reaping the benefits of that. Well done. Let this grow your sleep confidence so you sleep good forever. Thank you so much for, again, like Brittany, coming back and telling us. That's so helpful. I just want to point out that spending less time in bed helps in so many ways. One of them being feeling more refreshed, and that is the most kind of counterintuitive benefit, I think. Like, how can you feel more refreshed spending less time in bed? Well, guess what? Your sleep becomes more higher quality. That's one. You get deeper, more quality sleep. And number two is like when you take the psychological step away from trying to sleep, when you're spending less time in bed, some of the hyperarousal goes away. Like some of that like trying to sleep, the fighting to sleep, the battling sleep, the insomnia, that part, that gives you so much fatigue. So when you take a step away from like the battle with insomnia, I think that also helps a lot. So awesome, awesome, awesome. Well done, Glynis. Super happy to read this. And now let us move forward here. There's a comment from Elizabeth Braswell, also I believe on. No, that's talking. So I've been willing to come on as a podcast guest on Thursday. Haven't said an exact time, but we're going to talk to Elizabeth on Thursday. So thank you. And if anybody else wants to become a podcast guest, please send me an email or let me know in a comment. Now, oh yeah, here's a good one. Let's see. This is from Vitamin C, and this is a comment actually on Insomnia Insight number 115. Mike M feels as he's not sleeping, but think he does. So it's an episode about paradoxical insomnia. Paradoxical insomnia is when someone estimates sleeping much less than they actually objectively do. And now Vitamin C asks the following. Hi, Dan. Should I be worried about having the type of sleep where I feel like I don't sleep at all? Are there any dire consequences? And that type of sleep it's known as paradoxical insomnia. I think the important thing, when did I realize this? I realized this. Of course, this was when I talked to Grace in Talking Insomnia number 17. That Grace had had gotten this sense that paradoxical insomnia was a particular different type of insomnia that there was maybe no particular treatment for, etc. It's not like that at all. Paradoxical insomnia just means that you're overestimating how much you're awake by a lot, but it's nothing different from plain old regular, insomnia. Meaning, people who don't have any trouble sleeping tend to overestimate how much they sleep. People think they sleep 7 hours, but in reality sleep 6. That's kind of like an average person. Now, people with insomnia do the opposite. Typically underestimate by 1 hour. So it's like somebody with insomnia, kind of like, typical insomnia, if you want to call it that, sleep maybe 5 hours, but estimate sleeping 4. That's the kind of classical. Now, so everyone with insomnia has paradoxical insomnia to some degree, but for those who have that kind of strong underestimation of how much they sleep, have what we call paradoxical insomnia. There's no specific definition for it, but it's nothing different. It's nothing different from, again, regular insomnia, except that there's this discrepancy between perceived sleep and objective sleep. So should I be worried about it? Not at all. Not at all. As we talk about a lot on this channel, having short sleep or insomnia has never been shown to cause any negative health consequences. So I think that answers it. And what should one do if one has paradoxical insomnia? Same thing. Spend less time in bed, and then just try to be happy during the day. Try to do fun things. That is it. Cool. Now, we have a question from Sofia Pereira. This is a comment also on Talking Insomnia number 17. And let's read it. Hi, Dan. How are you? I'm good, thank you. I saw your video on fatal insomnia, and it helped me a bit until I heard you talk about body temperature. For the past weeks, I haven't been able to sleep well. I always sleep 4 hours, wake up and sleep a bit more. The last 3 days, I've been feeling like my body temperature is a wreck. I feel chills all over my body, even though my body is warm, and I'm getting really scared about it. The beginning symptoms of this insomnia are anxiety and panic attacks, and I really don't know how to cope with this anymore. I just want to feel like I'm all right. Any tips? I definitely have tips, and I said in a reply there, I asked, what did I say about the temperature? And Sofia said, well, you something about people with this type of insomnia can't really control their body temperature, and she's referring to the sporadic fatal insomnia or fatal insomnia. Now, I want to say the following. Number one is yes, fatal insomnias are in my opinion, they are neurological, like neurodegenerative conditions like Parkinson's disease or Alzheimer's disease, or actually the most closely related one would be like mad cow disease. Now, um, it is very obvious when somebody has a neurodegenerative condition. They have trouble with like coordination, walking, talking, etc. Nothing Now, more importantly, to answer this question, when someone has, and by the way, I don't think there is any expert on fatal insomnias, and I'm not an expert in that particular field, but using my kind of my general knowledge of physiology and sleep, when somebody has like temperature instability, when they can't, when somebody's body cannot regulate the temperature, which can be a late stage of a neurodegenerative condition, that's like late stage. That's like that person is, cannot talk or speak or like think, like that's very, very late. So if somebody can write a coherent comment on a YouTube video, then that person cannot have temperature instability because of like neurodegenerative disease. So that is important to point out. Now, you say here at the beginning symptoms. Oh yeah, I just want to point out too, like body temperature is different from, of course, like chills. Like we may have like cold sweats and night sweats and feel very cold or very hot, but our core temperature is normal. And so if you check your temperature objectively, that may give you a different picture than kind of your subjective measure of it. That's another thing. And then the beginning symptoms of this insomnia are anxiety and panic attacks. And I don't know how to cope with it anymore. Well, I want to say this. I'm not an anxiety or panic attack expert, but I know this about insomnia. It is the treatment for it, how to get better it's really the same for everyone. It's the same for everyone. It's like spend less time in bed and give sleep no attention. And when you have insomnia, you might feel like, how's that going to help me? Because I have this, I have, I don't have that. Well, that thinking of like my insomnia is different, that's not going to work for me. It doesn't help anyone. It, so many people with insomnia feel like their insomnia is different, and that's not going to help them. But guess what? Every single insomniac, in my opinion, that commits to like just spending less time in bed and shifting attention will get better. Those are my tips. Sofia, thank you for chiming in here and let me know how things go. Stay in touch. And then we have a comment from Andres. And this is actually a comment on Insomnia Insight number 120. And that is up with a video on like twitches and jerks, hypnic jerks and twitches and things like that. And Anders just said, I don't sleep too well because of them. It's 2 days no sleep, 1 day normal sleep, repeat. It's continuous and no amount of sleeping pills work. One thing that may actually help is tuning into this Talking Song number 16 with Alex. And by the way, I had this big insight, which I should have mentioned when I was talking about Alex's recent question, which was because Alex asked me what was that insight. Well, it was the following: I realized that there was this not doing anything versus doing nothing. That was my insight. That Alex has said that I did nothing. And it felt that helped. Like Alex, I think, had developed this belief, correct me if I'm wrong, Alex, that by actively doing nothing, he had kind of started to overcome these like events that are happening in sleep transition. But my insight was that when you're doing anything to try to overcome hyperarousal, it may seem like that. It may seem like what you're actively doing is working because you're not allowing yourself to do nothing. When you're doing nothing and nothing happens, that's the ultimate relief. That's the ultimate relief. So by doing that, that was kind of insight. Hope that makes sense. But anyway, going back to Anders here. Sorry I'm sorry having this happening. These jerks and twitches, and they are typically hyper arousal driven, and the key to that, I believe, is actually not to give them any attention. It's really hard because when you have these things happen to you, you want to try to solve, like it's a problem, you want to try to solve it, you want to try to do something so they happen less. But whatever you do actively, it just brings more attention to them. And attention is kind of creating hyperarousal. Hyperarousal is when your mind is kind of in this like very heightened alert state, and then they happen more. So I believe that's the key. I hope this little reply helps, Andres, and just stay in touch and let us know how things work. And you mentioned here, no amount of sleeping pills work. I'm not entirely surprised by that, because when we do anything to decrease hyperarousal, including taking medications, and we kind of take a medication, then I hope this will help. Well, that brings attention to the problem, which makes it worse. So I hope this helped. And then I think finally here that this is going to be the final thing we go over here. It's a comment on Talking Song number 17 from Noon Smith an hour ago, and Noon said the following: "Hey, on the 28th of last month, I haven't been able to get good sleep. I've been waking up every 2 to 3 hours or so, and then went to the hospital and I was told it was anxiety. I want to believe that, but when I see that what SFI was, and now I'm starting to believe I have that because I can't stay asleep." So there are a lot of people that are worried about this SFI, sporadic fatal insomnia, and I think you probably know this, that is extremely rare. It's been like, I don't know, a handful of cases in the history of the world, so it's extremely unusual. Number two, these neurodegenerative conditions are, in my experience and my knowledge, is not, they're not, when somebody has it, it's obvious, like they can't talk or they can't walk, or that people tell them like something's off with you. And I'm not talking about like I feel a little out of balance, or like I felt the chill. It's like people are like, something's definitely wrong with you, or something's wrong with you, you need to see a doctor. When people are reacting that way, then that's different from like this kind of subtle, like this subjective feeling of something wrong with you. And so if somebody does not have obvious neurological symptoms, I feel like it's very unlikely that they have SFI. Anxiety, on the other hand, extremely common, and an extremely common reason for having insomnia. So the problem with SFI has been, maybe, as I mentioned earlier, if you check on Insomnia Insight number 248, there's this comment from Highfield Invest where he says, you can actually find out if you have SFI or not by sequencing your genome, and apparently that's not so complicated anymore. But the problem with SFI is the ambiguity. Like, do I have it or do I not have it? The fact that you cannot find out can lead to so much anxiety and insomnia, right? And if you cannot find out, you can almost decide to believe one thing or the other. You can decide to believe that this is anxiety driven, and then go down the path of cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. And then I believe this is anxiety driven, so therefore I'm going to spend less time in bed, and I'm going to not pay any attention to insomnia, kind of live my life kind of thing. Or you can choose to believe that I truly have SFI, and there's no cure for it, there's no help to get. And then what's that path like? Well, if somebody believes that I truly have it, there's nothing to do about it, well, then it becomes a matter of, well, I'm going to do all the things that I've always wanted to in life while I still have my faculties. I'm going to tell people that I love them. I'm going to travel. I'm going to do this thing, and both of them leads because I think it's extremely unlikely that somebody has SFI. So it's more likely that they do things that they enjoy in life and then realize it wasn't that, and then you have something good come out of that, or you go down the CBTI route and then you end up sleeping better. So both really work, I believe. So with that said, let's see, what was that notification here? Okay, let's include one last one, since it just came in as I was speaking here. It's from AceTim. It's a comment on Ask Daniel number 3. Daniel, I've been having bad sleep lately. I can hardly get any sleep. I had dreams last night and woke up around 10. Could I have sporadic failed insomnia? Another one. I have no appetite. I'm afraid I'll never sleep and die a horrible death. Please get back to me. Well, I'm super sorry you're having these concerns, and I believe by tuning into this episode, you'll hear a repetition of what I'm going to say now, which is SFI is extremely rare. Being worried about it, to me, signals that somebody does not have it, because kind of that anxiety, it's not a strong component of neurodegenerative conditions, because it's very obvious if you have it or not. I have no appetite. Well, again, like always, like if you're worried about the health, you have to see a doctor. But that there are many reasons one could not have appetite, of course, like anxiety, being worried, that affects our appetite, of course, right? And I want to say, if you're worried, check with the doctor. But you can apparently sequence your genome maybe to find out if you have it or not. But again, just as I literally just a few seconds ago talked to another viewer about, you can also go down the path of like deciding, like I think I have it, or I think I don't have it. I think the best thing to do always when it comes to sleep is spend less time in bed, and then don't pay sleep any attention. And how do you do that? How do you not pay something attention? Well, you can't decide not to do, like you can't just decide not to think about something. You have to do stuff. You have to, do things you enjoy, do something new, go skating, or like, I don't know, whatever it is, but do something that's fun and engaging to take your mind off of sleep, shift your attention. That's really helps with sleep. Ace and everybody else that's contributed, I'm so grateful for every single comment and email. And this became a very long episode. I might decide to do this like every more frequently. And oh, I see Ace is on live here, and Grace too. And wow, it's amazing. Okay, so